The Pathfinder Adventure card game is a cooperative adventure game from designer Mike Selinker and Kaja.
In the Pathfinder Adventure Game, players are a group of adventurers who work together to race against the clock and defeat a dangerous scenario and its villain. It plays with 1 to 4 players in about an hour. The base set comes with the first adventure deck out of the Rise of the Runelords Adventure Path. Now the next 5 adventure decks will be released bi-monthly. There's also a character add-on deck, which adds cards for 2 more players.
So one session of the Pathfinder Adventure card game is a scenario, and you can link multiple scenarios together into an adventure. Adventures, in turn, are going to link into a campaign-length adventure path. Your characters are going to gain new abilities, new items, and generally develop experience between scenarios.
Players start by choosing a scenario and setting up its location decks according to the cards listed and the number of players. Each player chooses a character and builds a character deck according to the card list on the back of their character card. 30 blessing cards are taken from the box and placed in a face-down deck, and each player places their token card at a location of their choice. Everyone draws a starting hand of the size listed on their character card, and the game begins.
A player starts their turn by turning over the top card of the blessing deck. Next, they may give one of the cards in their hand to another player who's at their same location. After that, they may move their token card to another location of their choice, although this will trigger an effect at either of the locations they're moving with, if there are effects that depend on movement. Next, they can choose to explore their current location by turning over the top card of its deck.
If the card is a boon, you can pass a skill check listed on the right side of the card to take that boon into your hand. Boons can be armor, weapons, spells, items, allies, or loot. If the card is a bane card, which is a henchman, a monster, or a barrier, you must pass a skill check listed on the card in order to remove that card from the game.
During a skill check, you roll the die that is listed next to the skill that you're using on your character card. Now, you can try to make a skill check for a skill that you don't actually have, but you'll always use a d4.
Before you roll, all players can add cards to your check with a limit of 1 card per type per player. Once all the cards have been played, you roll your dice, and if you meet or exceed the skill value listed on the encountered card, then you pass.
Success on a boon lets you add it to your hand, while failure means that it is permanently removed from the game. If you fail to defeat a bane, then you take damage by discarding cards from your hand equal to the difference between your roll result and the difficulty of the card. The bane is then shuffled back into its location deck.
If there are no cards left in a location deck, or if you've just defeated a henchman, you can attempt to close a location. Now you do this by meeting the criteria listed on the location card. If you succeed in this, then you can look through the deck and look for the villain. If the villain is not there, you discard the cards that are in the deck and close that location. The when permanently closed effect comes into play, and you turn over the location card. If you do find the villain in that location, then you discard all the other cards in that deck. The villain card becomes the only card left at that location.
The villain is a special kind of bane. When they're encountered, all of the other players can try to temporarily close the other locations by fulfilling the location closing requirements at their current location. Then the player who encountered the villain takes their skill check.
If the villain is defeated, you immediately close their location. If there are any other open locations available, then the villain escapes. You take that villain card and add enough blessing cards to it to add up to the number of open locations. You then deal one of those cards to each open location. If the villain was defeated, these blessings are drawn from the box. In any other case, they are drawn from the deck. If there are no open locations for the villain to escape to, then the players win.
At the end of their turn, the active player resets their hand by discarding any cards that they don't want, and then either drawing up or discarding down to their hand size. Now, if a player at any point in the game has to draw a card and can't, their character dies and they're out of the game. If all of the characters die, then the players lose, and the players also lose if the blessing deck runs out of cards.
So I'm a really big fan of Pathfinder as an RPG, and Paizo as a company tends to put out a lot of stuff that I'm pretty interested in. So when I heard about the Pathfinder Adventure card game, I was pretty excited. I'm also pretty excited that they decided to use the Rise of the Runelords Adventure Path for this sort of start out for their card game. I think it was a really good choice. It's a great story. I've played the Rise of the Runelords Adventure Path as an RPG, and it's just a really immersive, great little story, and I was very excited to see it in another medium, basically. So this game is really easy to learn. If you're an RPG player coming to this card game, you're going to find it very easy to teach, very easy to learn, very easy to play, quick to play, an hour at most for a scenario, which is great. Also, Paizo has managed to keep a lot of the feel of the RPG in this game in terms of the cooperation involved. So you're definitely working as a party. You're always working together to defeat any minions or henchmen or villains. There's always opportunities to talk amongst each other and to work on the strategy together, which I really like. It feels like they've really kept that atmosphere of an RPG that people are going to enjoy. One negative to this game, though, if you are an RPG player coming to the game, it is definitely lighter on strategy than a tabletop RPG. It's lighter game for sure. There's not as many opportunities for you to really dig into the story and to really work on tactical complexity for sure. This is definitely a card game, and some people might find it a little lacking on sort of the strategic side.
I also came to this adventure game as an RPG player, but unlike Joanna, I hadn't actually played the Rise of the Runelords Adventure Path, and it led to a little bit of disappointment when I came to this game because it's kind of lacking in fluff and flavor. It uses, from what I understand, it uses a lot of the locations and the events from Rise of the Runelords, but because there's not a lot of fluff text on the cards, because there's not a lot of kind of framing description, you don't really get a sense of the story unless you're already familiar with it, which is a shame because Paizo has so much great material to work with. I would have liked to see them integrate it a little bit more fully and just give the game a little bit of a stronger sense of place that I thought was lacking. That being said, it's still quite an enjoyable game. Like Joanna said, it's relatively simple mechanics-wise. We're talking about something that is about the same difficulty level as like an intense game of Munchkin, but there's a huge amount of variety to it because of the way that the cards are used. Not only are your locations randomly generated, so even if you come back to the same place, it's not going to feel the same, but the way that the cards are integrated into your character deck is really intelligent and really gives your character a sense of progress and development over the course of the adventure, as well as from scenario to scenario. I also really, really appreciate the way that they've made this scale from little one-off games that you can just play as individual scenarios if that's all you want, to a really long, really in-depth adventure path where your characters are going to progress, you're going to tell a really elaborate story, and some of that story that isn't already built into the game is going to come out of your own gameplay. You know, if you're playing with the same gaming group through like 20 adventures, you're going to get a story together, and it's going to really grow and emerge in the way that RPGs do when they're done well, and it's wonderful to see that that quality's been captured here so strongly.